Welcome to Little Bighorn Treasure Hunting Sources 79, 150-year anniversary of the battle at the Little Bighorn Part 4. To the victors go the spoils. 10 soldiers wounded and bleeding in the pile of men and horses turned to run and were killed by White Bull and the others in their way. They were the last group to try to escape, although other troopers were still alive on Battle Ridge from Custer's Fall. The survivors of CNF companies made their stand in a dwindling knot on the hillside under a hail of arrows and bullets. Their strength was fast decreasing. They fell one by one, their bodies slumping across those of dead comrades with little shelter from enemy fire. Many of them sold their lives dearly, fighting on bravely to the end. 2 of the soldiers of F Company were shot dead near the top of the ridge. Hundreds of older men and young boys on horseback watched the end of the fight from surrounding hills, keeping far enough away from the safety out of gun range of any soldiers who remained alive. Behind them, many women were coming up to look on, sensing the battle was almost over and feeling no doubt a little of the importance of the day's happenings. A swell of excitement surged through the onlookers when the north slope of the battle ridge, a tall soldier jumped to his feet, ran across a little gulch towards a high knob to the north. Perhaps he thought some of his comrades might be alive there, still holding out, or that the gulch beyond the knob might provide him an avenue of escape. He stopped short when he saw hundreds of warriors still in the gulch. Standing there on the hillside, he put his revolver to his head and pulled the trigger. Black Elk, who the Togia language was handed down from, that's Nicholas Black Elk, was among hundreds of boys who rode down from the hills to shoot arrows into the soldiers. By this time, only a handful of whites was still alive and kicking, and all the soldiers were down. Black Elk shot an arrow into the forehead of one soldier. After he stopped quivering, the boy rode on. Another soldier was stuck full of arrows but was still squirming a little. Black Elk got down and began to remove his blue coat. Then an older man came up and pushed the boy away, taking the coat for himself. But Black Elk saw something bright and shiny fastened to the soldier's belt and got it. It was gold and round and very pretty. Since it had a long chain on it, Black Elk hung it around his neck as a charm. At first it made a strange ticking sound, but finally stopped. It was a long time before the young Oglala learned how to wind it up and make it tick again. Another boy younger than Black Elk asked him to scalp a soldier for him. After taking the scalp and handing it to the little boy, Black Elk watched him scamper off to show it to his mother. By this time, a great mass of women had swarmed up Battle Ridge to look at the dead soldiers and see whether any of their own men were among the Indian casualties. As they came on, they were singing victory songs and sounding tremola. The stench of blood was strong in the still air. While warriors stripped the uniforms from the dead soldiers, several mounted Indians with lances rode around, jabbing their spear points into the left thighs of naked bodies. In this fashion, the fallen enemies were officially counted dead. Here and there along the ridge, warriors were administering the final coup de grace by firing the soldiers' own pistols at their heads at point-blank range. 2 fat old women were laughing as they stripped a wounded soldier. Once he was naked, they started to cut off his genitals with their knives. Subtly, inexplicably, he was on his feet. Convulsively, he lunged at his tormentors. A third woman heard her companion shouting for help and ran up to shove her own knife into the soldier, killing him at last. Warriors all around laughed loud and long to see the soldier playing dead, then trying to fight the 2 fat women. Cheyenne warrior One Horn recognized the soldier as the one who threw down his carbine and began shooting his Colt revolver. One Horn picked up this carbine. Among the bravest of the soldiers was a big man with a stubby black beard and long mustache which curled up at the end. Several Cheyennes, including Turkey Legs, had ridden him down toward the end of the fight. He had acted much like the leader of the soldiers might have been expected to act. Although the white bars he wore had little meaning to the Indians, they assumed the captain's insignias was part of a personal medicine. His body lay among those partway down the slope near the barricade of dead horses. Amazingly, he seemed to come to life right before their eyes. He propped himself up on one elbow and looked around him as though he had just arrived from another world. Looking about with a wild expression on his face, almost like that of a madman, he gripped a pistol in his right hand. A courageous Sioux warrior ran forward, grabbed the revolver out of the white man's grasp, then turned it on him and shot him through the head. The Cheyennes mustered up enough courage after that to strike and stab him until all sure he was dead. He was the last man of Custer's command to be killed on the ridge. This brave man may well have been Captain Miles Keogh, gallant Irish soldier of fortune, former papal guardsman and Civil War hero. Not far from this spot lay the body of a soldier whose sweeping side whiskers at once caught the attention of the sparse bearded Indians. So luxurious was the growth of beard covering all of the dead man's face, save only his chin, that Wooden Leg, who was leading his horse among the dead, stopped and scalped the dead soldier's cheek. "I have a new kind of scalp," he announced proudly to his companion. He tied the strange scalp to an arrow shaft and carried it about as he wandered on among the bodies. Lieutenant Cook, Custer's adjutant, had such a beard. A cry went up around all the horsemen as they rode through the crowd still watching from the hills. It was Sitting Bull on his great black stallion, his face grave, his manner not at all like a victorious conqueror, but rather that of a father concerned about the well-being of his children. "Are they dead, all?" he asked, and from those near him came the answer, "Yes." "All right, let's go back to our camp. Take nothing belonging to the soldiers. Leave everything here. Hayupo, come." As Sitting Bull started back toward camp, many Indians, Hunkpapas, Blackfeet, Yanktonias followed. In spite of Sitting Bull's warning, hundreds of Indians stayed on Battle Ridge, looting the bodies of the soldiers, stripping off the uniforms, taking the weapons, ammunition. A few responsible fighting men remembered the remnants of Reno's command surrounded on the Bluff Up River and rode off in that direction to renew the siege. Items they found were like field glasses and a jointed cleaning rod, and several such weapons whose cartridges were caught in the breach were deliberately thrown away in the Little Bighorn as unusable, for the warriors had no way to extract the spent shells. Many soldiers had been carrying leather packages carrying sheets of green paper with pictures on them. Some of them were kept by the finders, while some were given to children who enjoyed looking at the pictures. A 7-year-old Cheyenne boy named Spotted Hawk used one such sheet as a saddle blanket for a toy rawhide horse, but most of the bills were discarded as worthless bits of paper. Few Indians on the Little Bighorn realized the green paper had any value. Even had they known, it would have meant but little to them. The 7th Cavalry had received 2 months' pay since leaving Fort Abraham Lincoln, and so had carried some $25,000 into battle. A far more significant discovery from the Indians' viewpoint was made by Wooden Leg, a Cheyenne, when he found a soldier's canteen half full of some liquid that definitely was not water. After sniffing the metal bottle, a more knowledgeable Sioux said whiskey. Other such bottles were found scattered over the field, and some Indians drank the contents. Many of them tried to drink, but quickly spat out the fiery liquid. Bobtail Horse took a big swig from Wooden Leg's canteen, got violently sick, and vomited. Indians thought soldiers had been made crazy with this drink. At last it was clear why the soldiers had attacked the great camp with inadequate force, why they had hesitated at the ford and committed other tactical blunders, and why so many of them had fired in the air and waved their arms widely and finally killed themselves rather than die as brave men should. Several Indians wise to the ways of the whites insisted that not enough whiskey was gone from any of the bottles to make a white man crazy, but the idea persisted nevertheless. The soldiers' downfall was due to the white man's Minnewanka holy water. Sitting Bull was gravely concerned because his people had flagrantly disobeyed his orders not to mutilate or loot the dead soldiers. His immediate band had taken nothing. Hundreds of others had taken much of what the soldiers had. Here are some weapons from this part of the battle. And here's a story from Dewey Beard, last warrior to survive from the Little Bighorn, that he told to Orville Selway. Along the bluff on the east side of the river, when we got to the deep coulee, we rode straight at the last stand hill. The battle was almost over. We helped kill the last of the soldiers. I watched as 2 Cheyenne They were a father and son, Spotted Wolf and his son White Elk, take a white-handled revolver from a man with a blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, and it was very bloody. This soldier had hair under his nose. My brother Standing Bear found a buckskin coat laying on the ground. It had a bullet hole in it and was bloody. My brother was only 16 years old, so the two Cheyenne tried to take the coat away from him. My brother fought hard to keep the coat. Chief Buffalo Bull rode up to the fight, and my brother handed the coat to him so he would not lose it. Buffalo Bull found another white-handled revolver in the pocket of the buckskin coat. Buffalo Bull kept the revolver and later gave the coat back to my brother Standing Bear. Custer was dressed as described. Here is Buffalo Bull's knife, stone, and war club that all have his name on them. And the percussion revolver is an early Beals 44 caliber serial number 239. And we may have a chance to film one of the two bulldogs that belong to Custer at the July 2026 Winchester show in Cody, Wyoming. Next is a Remington 44 caliber revolver, serial number 21853, that belonged to Wooden Leg, who cut off the sideburn scalp believed to have been removed from Lieutenant Cook, Custer's adjutant. Wooden Leg also discovered a canteen with whiskey. Great Cheyenne sunburst is on the bottom of the grips on that revolver. A quick mention of White Bull's, who was the Rambo of the battle in my missing 1865 Spencer carbine, serial number 857, that was ripped off from the Crooked auction in Las Vegas. White Bull cruised over the dead on the Battle Ridge and was with Buffalo Bull at Custer's dead body. Then over here we have the Springfield Trapdoor, serial number 41140, issued to Private James J. Galvin, Company L, which was the first company to be wiped out on Battle Ridge. The stock was broken, most likely from using it as a club in the last moments of the struggle to survive. And it was picked up by Comes Again in Oglala. I was lucky enough to find an original long wrist stock to replace the broken original. Next to it is another Trapdoor carbine, Springfield carbine, serial number 43501, issued to Henry A. Bailey, the blacksmith for Company I. He was also killed. And Company I was the second company to fall, commanded by Captain Keogh. Red Hawk Alala took this carbine from one of the several he killed at the Little Bighorn. His son, Amongst the Cloud, had the gun. When Nicholas Black Elk carved the star right here that you see at the stronghold after the Wounded Knee massacre. Here are one of my favorites as we go on down. Here, Trapdoor carbine, 1875, serial number 41082. This one was issued to Samuel Staples, Company I. He was killed and is on the monument, taken by the great Northern Cheyenne warrior Black Horse. He killed enemies at the Rosebud and Little Bighorn and helped fight with Dull Knife, Little Wolf, American Horse, the 1,500 miles from the Oklahoma reservation to their home country, and won the right to have their own reservation. Jerome Green wrote a book, January Moon, and a movie was made of their journey north of the Cheyenne. Another favorite next to it is Springfield Trapdoor 1873 model, serial number 17653, issued to Andrew Connect, Company E, the third company to be wiped out. This was picked up by One Horn, who saw him throw it down when they were retreating. And then later, when he fought with the two squaws playing dead on the Battle Ridge, and stabbed by the third squaw, and he recognized him as the fat, sweaty guy who had thrown down the carbine he picked up. So that's a pretty cool piece. Last is This last trapdoor carbine, serial number 37385, issued to Thomas J. Finnegan, Company F. Attacked by Bear Bird from behind. The carbine slung over his back, and you can see the sling swivels that he had installed on the bottom, which none of the other ones did. Company C and F were the last to perish. It is believed 198 died there with Custer at this part of the battle. And Captain Keogh commanded Company I and was said to be the last man alive on the battle ridge. Hope you enjoyed the history from Custer's Fall and Many Roads history. Watch the 5th part of the battle, Benteen rescues Reno's command. It's pretty cool to have the soldiers' names and Indians' names on the guns. Thanks for watching. God bless.